Cannibalism is, as you know, commonplace in the natural world for hollows. To devour their kind is an expression of them giving in to their most raw, primordial instinct to evolve themselves into something greater than could ever be thought. However, it has been suggested there is a limit to how much they can grow by the natural means of consuming other souls, if they weren't favored by natural selection. And to think that a hollow of the lowest class of Menos was the one to bypass that limit by achieving the evolutionary advantage of also taking the individual abilities of the hollow it consumes. In fact, its potential to evolve indefinitely is the very reason why an Arrancar evolved from a Gilion class was able to earn a seat on the Espada. It's what allowed them to be the last standing member of the original Espada to keep pace with future generations of Arrancars when other past Espada members that were of the Ajuchas class had fallen behind those of the current era. They are the Novena Espada, Aaroniero Arruruerie, a hollow that takes the form of two separate conscious entities that exist as two parts of the same mind, speaking in turns following the same train of thought. The head with the deep-sounding voice is usually emotionally hardened, if not pride-driven, while the other, with the high-pitched voice, can become more emotionally expressive. Nonetheless, together, they are every bit as cruel, sadistic, and arrogant as what your typical hollow seems to be. Although a malicious being to the core, Aaroniero is surprisingly self-conscious of their unsightly appearance, as it can be seen in their effort to conceal the abnormalities they're insecure about behind a mask and a fanciful style of dress. Evolving from the lowest class of Menos likely contributed to their unfortunate form, being two disembodied spherical heads that can't live out of their vessel filled with preservation fluids, whose innate hollow powers can only be active in the darkness. The Novena Espada have little choice but to operate in the shadows, as the sunlight would render them powerless. Still, on a basis of evolutionary potential, Aaroniero Arruruerie remains unparalleled in the history of the creations of Arrancars. The infinite capacity for growth could have only been obtained through the use of their Hollow Eater, which can break down the very essence of hollows, allowing them to take everything from what they devoured and manifest it at will, such as through one's physical form, spiritual energy, memories, powers, and more. As far as we can see, they're probably limited for the most part to one hollow at a time in their sealed state, but if they bring forth everything from within them, the Novena Espada's resurrection, we will come to understand why they're known as the all-devouring hollow. Devour her! Glutonera! Through the total assimilation of every hollow they devoured, which in essence is the same as having the power of 33,650 hollows entirely at their disposal. Them taking genuine enjoyment from playing with their food and its cannibalistic power to feel bigger and more powerful than they can be, of course, is all part of their aspect of death, greed. In spite of its status as a Gilion evolved Arrancar, the 9th Espada still stands to proclaim how special they are, even amongst the Espada, not only in evolutionary potential, but as well as being the only Arrancar to have both a resurrection and a Shikai, which had belonged to a Lieutenant Shinigami via combo meal. Because the two consumed a hollow infused with a Shinigami, Aaroniero has even taken the essence of something they shouldn't normally be able to. Donning the face of the Shinigami, Kaien Shiba, set an encounter for what turned out to be a fateful reunion with the one intruder who had not only had an emotional connection with the deceased Shinigami, but was also the one who had slain him with her own hands. Under the guise of Rukia's deceased mentor and friend, it was only ripe for preying upon her guilt over the killing of Kaien.
Kuchiki, 忘れたわけじゃねえだろ。俺を差し抜いたあの感触。
In a clever ploy to manipulate her into getting exactly what they want by putting the guilt-ridden Shinigami in a situation where she felt she had no choice, they nearly had Rukia convinced that Kaien, by all appearances, had risen from the dead if not for their greed giving them away. While they sold themselves as the person strongly reminiscent of the Kaien she knew and cherished, Aaroniero also made him look as if he grew bitter and resentful towards her for being responsible for his death. Rukia, consumed with the guilt of murdering Kaien, for which she wishes to atone by giving in to his demand to give up her life to repent. She obliged his initial demand without question, but what followed next made her come to a concrete realization.
I want you to bring me the heads of your 4 friends.
That this person claiming to be Kaien couldn't possibly be the real Kaien Shiba. Because Rukia carries a heavy burden of guilt, her judgment was clouded by the one person she wanted to believe in. Still, no matter how convincing the man that stood before her eyes might have been, the Kaien she once knew would never act against his principles of connection and companionship. No matter how much time passes, no matter how big this grudge may be, his inmost nature is someone who always advocates for his subordinate to stand by those they care about. But as far as Aaroniero is concerned, the outcome was obviously determined, and what fate presented was an opportunity too good to pass up. To put it simply, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to mentally torture a Shinigami using someone they held dearly just couldn't be resisted. It didn't matter that the facade fell through. She was so grossly outmatched they didn't get the chance to use any of their hollow powers before they broke her blade. And not only that, but her spirit. Her will to even fight back broke long before that happened. Rukia, nearly dead with little hope to continue, was taken back to memories with Kaien, and from there a moment of realization as she understood his past teachings. While this hollow may have his physical form, his mind, and spiritual powers, she will embody something far more valuable, such as everything Kaien Shiba had stood for, and she will live on to carry his compassion, promising to uphold the memories of her beloved mentor and the ideals he left with her. And as for the one that shamed his name, we see that Aaroniro's greed had gotten the better of themselves, their victory within easy reach, and yet they're suffering a painful and humiliating defeat, with one in complete anguish about being led with false promises, and the other made stoic in its grief, not accepting the reality before them. The rest of the Espada felt the loss of their presence. However, unlike Kaien Shiba, no one will live to carry on their name because, for hollows like them, Aaroniero Arruruerie has no place in their hollow heart. All right! How do you feel about Aaroniero Arruruerie? Give me your thoughts, opinions, and criticism of their character down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think of him.